we've grown up on products of Baidyanath, so that needs no introduction. But just walk me through at a personal level. You've done your great schooling, education, and you got involved in the business. Then you spent some time with McKinsey outside. What kind of triggered this move, and what was the kind of things are always there. One is your lineage is it tells me that you've been grown up on this
And of course.
wellness and Ayurveda. But there must be something which triggered, I can actually change it in a different manner. So maybe walk me through at a personal
Sure.
level, Amev,
Sure.
what that means for you.
No, absolutely. So Rajiv, I did my undergrad in the US and I came back to India and then I worked in the family business for almost about 6 years, right? Uh, my stint in the business, the first 4 years were very operational, right? But the last 2 years, what we realized is that as the family is getting larger, right? So I am third generation in the family, right? In my father's generation, there were there's 3, 4 people, right? And then beyond that, it's getting larger and larger and larger, right? So the idea was to kind of have families step back from management and bring in a professional management to run the company, right? So the model now is that we have a CEO, we have a CFO, we have a CMO. They operationally run the company completely, and then there's a group of family members who do monthly review meetings, right? So the involvement in Baidyanath was reduced significantly, right? This was a concerted effort because end of the day, even though there might be one person in the family who is well suited to do something, right? Or there might be a couple of people who are both right. But end of the day, within family, it becomes a challenge, right? And who are you going to listen to, right? Where I was not required much, right? So I'm the kind of person who works 12 hours a day. So working one day a week was not really an option. So I was saying, what next? And funnily enough, Ayurveda was not the obvious answer, right? So I was like, okay, I can do anything, right? What should I do next, right? So so I thought, okay, I've done my undergrad. Let me go do my MBA and let me get some outside work experience, right? That's something which I always felt that I was missing. So I had got a job in New York after my undergrad, but at that time I was required in the business, in the family business, right? So I came back, but I've always wanted to work outside for a few years. So went out, decided to do my MBA. So at that time I had met who's my current co-founder, Shrey, through a friend. And we got talking and we both wanted to kind of start something new, right? So we were both like, okay, let's quit our jobs and let's start a new business. But then the question came up, what are we going to start? So we started freeballing ideas. We started talking about, should we look at food? Should we look into the restaurant business? Should we look at making a fund? Because he was from private equity and I understood FMCG to some extent. A lot of things were thrown about. Finally, the idea we kind of came to was for multiple reasons, right? So the reason we chose Ayurveda again, right, after everything was, first of all, the opportunity was huge, right? Felt that right now, if you look at India, you look at global, look at the world, everybody's moving towards natural, moving towards herbal, right? So there was a definite tailwind. And there was definitely a advantage that I had coming from my background and my knowledge of the market and my knowledge of sourcing, right? The other 2 points were, the second point was more around, there was always a vision I had for Vedna, right? Of catering to a young audience, of being more innovative in our product selection, and also going down a path which is closer to the way I consume Ayurveda at home, right? And Ayurveda for me at home is much more in my daily life, right? And end of the day, what is Ayurveda? Ayurveda is good nutrition. And that's when it's most effective. That when you eat Ayurveda before, that's when it's most effective, not after. So that's where the whole kind of dream of kind of Kapiva came from, right? And we started initially with our own store model, but we realized that wasn't a very scalable model, and the FMCG model made a lot of sense. So roughly around early 2018, late 2017, we launched what you see today as Kapiva.
You chose a slightly different approach than Baidyanath. Okay, I mean Baidyanath is positioned traditionally, it comes out traditionally. I mean, if you hadn't told me that you have a new set of people, I mean, I identify Baidyanath, and the way we grew up. I mean, I used to have Amla and Amla ka Murabba and all of these things every day. and that was with a view to actually make it more appealable, relevant to a different audience who probably, if I tell my kids to have, Amla and Ayurveda, they kind of turn their nose up, and fact of the matter is, my daughter actually now gets flax seeds, because they're packaged differently. And, if I tell her to have flax seeds the old way, she will just say no. So tell me a little bit about that as to how that thinking came. It's only because you guys were in the same kind of generation. How did that? Did you do some testing? Did you talk to your friends? Did you talk to the market? How was that?
So actually, funnily enough, I would love to say that it was just all professional, like a great study we did and it came out of that, but it actually came out of experience, right? So when we launched, like I told you, before we launched Kapiva in its current version, we launched our physical stores, right? In the physical stores, we had a bunch of different products, right? What we very quickly found is that the second you put Ayurveda in a food format, right, people are much more willing to try it, right? If I tell a 25 to 30-year-old, right, that, hey, you know what, here's a capsule. He's like, but I'm not sick, Or I'm like, here's a churan. He's like, are you mad? I'm not going to have a churan. How am I going to eat this, right? Right? So the younger generation was not interested in the traditional form factor and the so-called even modern Ayurveda, which is a pharmaceuticalized version of it, right? Capsules. What we found, at the second it was in a food format, they were like, yeah, cool. I'll have a shot of juice in the morning. It's not a big deal, right? It's part of my diet, because they are used to doing things like that, because the West is actually, it's really funny though, if you look at it, the two biggest superfoods in the West are ashwagandha and turmeric, right?
Wow.
So India has exported Ayurveda to the US, and now US is exporting superfoods, which is actually Ayurveda, right? It's come full circle. It's really funny. Same thing happened with yoga, right? Yoga was not cool in India. Then the US stole it, and now the US is re-importing it back to us, right? Saying that here, this is cool in a nicer packaging. Take some yoga, right? So, I saw that happening in the US anyway. Right? So the idea was that why doesn't an Indian company take the lead, right? Why doesn't an Indian company be in the forefront of this? This is something which is our heritage. There's something which is our knowledge, right? We should be owning this. So when we initially launched, it was a very simple thought process, right? The thought process was that, okay, let's go through a food form factor. We'll start with juices, right? Something that I love to do, Rajiv, is that I love to speak to customers, right? I think very often in businesses, and I saw this in Vednath as well, right? You don't have enough of a close connection with your customer, and sometimes you lose that gap, right? So in Vednath, the only thing we were always obsessed about was quality. Quality. Like my whole generation, my family was obsessed with buying the raw material, the right manufacturing process, the right efficacy, which is very important, and which is why the company is where it is today, right? But nobody cared about marketing. No one cared about it, right? And I think it was important if you talk to the customer. Of course, the customer loves the quality. The customer loves the product, but when they try it, how do you get consumer trials to increase, right? So I noticed in my stint in Vednath that there was a gap where, we didn't understand how to get to the customer properly, right? So in Kapiva, I made it a sort of a thing that I need to speak to customers every week. So started to call 20, 30 customers every week, pretending to be a customer care executive, and started talking to them and understanding why they're taking the current products, what they don't like about the current products, what they don't like about other companies' products that they're taking, right? And the big thing that came up post our first product is that Ayurveda is associated with bad taste, right? The first association is Ayurveda tastes bad, so nobody young wants to take it, right? At 25, you don't care if you consume 1 gram of sugar, but if you care if something tastes horrible, right? Ayurveda is also associated with not a clear outcome, right? They're like, okay, what is the clear outcome, right? So people,
this is quite an insight. You're right.
Absolutely,
you're right. I mean, people want immediate gratification. Yes, no.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we started designing our products accordingly then, right? So the next product we launched were our shakes, right? So shakes are a shake you can mix in a water or milk. It has all your micronutrients, and Ayurvedic herbs, right? Just in that one shake, you get your entire dosage of Ayurvedic herbs. Tastes good, very easy to consume, very
Mm.
convenient, right? And at the same time, we've positioned it to solve a certain problem, which is measurable, right? So the kind of problems we solve now are energy, right? So you get a little pick me up. Something like a Brahmi Ashwagandha gives you a pick me up within a couple of days, makes you feel better, right? Digestion. So if you take amla, etc., for a week, immediately a system will improve. Skin and hair, right? So the biggest issue with skin and hair, we apply things on top, externally, but the biggest problem is actually nutrition. You lose hair, the skin goes bad because of nutrition, right? And eating things like aloe and amla, actually you can see results within a week, right? So we made our products in such a way where we are talking to a younger consumer who's having more lifestyle problems, where things are measurable. We're like, don't trust us, wait for the results, right? And we tried to package the product in such a way where it was not only convenient but tasty, right? So our next launch, like I said, was our gummies. Our shakes. Our shakes started doing very well. Post the shakes, we launched something called the first herbal gummies. So they are gummies that you can have. Each gummy has 1 gram of sugar, right? But it has a full dosage of amla, full dosage of aloe that you need, right? And it's tasty, convenient, easy, right? So, on one end, we realized we have a customer who's saying that, okay, I'm a purist. I just want the clean amla juice. I just want the clean wheatgrass juice. I want no sugar. But on one end, we have a customer who's like, I don't mind having 1 gram of sugar, but I'm not going to take the taste of amla, right? So, we started making our products more and more and more accessible, more and more convenient, and more easy to take, right? So finally, now we've launched 2 new products that have just done a soft launch. It's the first Ayurvedic breakfast, right? So this is basically a multi-grain breakfast with Ayurvedic herbs that taste really good, right? And then we've also launched now our effervescent, which is like a powder you mix in water and you drink. So the idea now going forward is convenience and taste.
Walk me through this Ayurvedic breakfast. It's something very, very interesting. And did you pick this up from your customer conversations?
Absolutely. So it came from the customer conversation, but of course we did a bunch of research around what is the right way to do it. So the insight that came from the customer was that, with your juice, I have to remember to take it every morning, right? When I wake up. Sometimes I forget, right? With your shake, I have to remember to drink it every day, right? Sometimes I forget. Can you do something where I don't have to remember? Automatically in my daily life, I'm consuming my Ayurvedic herbs, right? And we thought about it. What is a good way of doing this? Where we don't have to actually create an extra event for the consumer, but just include it into the daily life. And the immediate thing that we did a bunch of research and we came back with the idea of breakfast. So in every sort of, so we've created a breakfast, we've taken 9 months to create this product. So we're quite proud of it. But if you read like the description of it, we've like every single thing that the customer asked for, we put in that product, right? So customer asked for low calories, right? It's 160 calories. Customer asked for high protein. Customer asked for high fiber. Customer asked for full dosage of Ayurvedic herbs. So we have amla, we have turmeric, and we have giloy in the product, right? Customer asked for that I should also have some micronutrients like zinc and vitamin C. So we added that as well, right? Customer asked for that, okay, should have a lot of satiety. Should not just be 1 grain, because multi-grain is much healthier. So we went and did the research, what are the best grains for you? So oats is there, but we also added amaranth, we added green gram, we added barley, which are very, very high in satiety, very high in fiber, high in protein, and get absorbed much healthier for you. So we actually went back, took a bunch of problems, made sure the product is something which is truly differentiated, and kind of launched this product where you can get your entire dosage of Ayurveda and also have a very, very healthy breakfast, which is also very tasty, right? Initially, when we went to the R&D team, we're like, this is what we want. They're like, are you crazy? How is this possible, right? You can't have a healthy, tasty Ayurvedic breakfast, right? Ayurvedic herbs taste bad. How are you going to do it? But we figured it out. We found taste. We went and we actually helped develop something called tasteless extracts, right? Where the active ingredient is present, but the actual taste of the herb is reduced, right? So we actually went through a lot of R&D and kind of came up with this kind of breakfast product. And the insight came from a customer, absolutely.
Fantastic. Didn't know your story, at close quarters. saying family which has been in Ayurveda for generations, ये तो होना ही था. Okay. I mean, what if you did not grow up in that family? What, I mean, as an individual, would you have looked at it similarly? What would have been the starting position for you?
Sure.
Because, what you're telling me is fantastic, but now I know you've done a lot of daily grind. Be so different, yet the source of the emotion and the core is the same. I'm saying that was your core, but you expressed it differently and you had your own learning curve. And if you saw yourself today, and maybe your co-founder, he's not from the same background. I just want to understand, when you think about it, you've done your education, you worked there. This was natural, or you are thinking now, you're glad where you are. Obviously, you can leverage your family's experience, but how does that strike you when you reflect in a reflective mode?
No, absolutely. I think my experience with my family was invaluable, right? I think a lot of things that we've done today, I like to say, of course, and we have created this business as a standalone business, right?
No.
It's a completely independent entity. But definitely, if it wasn't for my background, there's a lot of things we would have gotten wrong. There's a lot of things would have taken a lot longer to learn as well, right? I'll give you some very simple examples, right? The insight that I came into regarding this business, right? Where the gaps were, where the opportunities were, it would have taken me years to figure out if I hadn't had or maybe I would have never figured out, honestly, if I hadn't had that background. The whole insight about how to use Ayurveda correctly, which is the birth of the company, came from the fact that I grew up in an Ayurvedic household, right? That, I know that, like, I've seen how Ayurveda is consumed at home, and hence I was able to kind of come up with that hypothesis, right? On top of that, on a practical level as well, the biggest challenge, Rajiv, in Ayurveda is sourcing, right? So buying the right raw materials at the right time from the right place, and finally at the right price also, right? Okay. That is a huge challenge, right? And that is a learning in the supply chain side. It's a big learning that I came into the business with, right? That I knew I had my Vednath network of suppliers. I had my Vednath network of manufacturers. So walking into the business with that ready and prepared, right? That is something which was invaluable. Right? That would have taken, I think, if you would have to start this without my background, probably 2-3 years more to be where we are right now, honestly. If we would have ever got here. So I'm very, very grateful for having that kind of background and being able to leverage it.
Tell me, you mentioned supply chain, and I'm just thinking aloud that, we as consumers are now getting more and more sensitive to how things are produced and where is the source coming from. I mean, I think the West is clearly, you have those marks, it's all organic. And you think now, because of the family's generations involvement with the supply chain and your insistence, and I'm sure a lot of good FMCG companies are also doing the same, milk. And I saw that you do desi ghee of A2 milk. And it's something which did strike me. Are you seeing the supply chain also come up to standards because people believe that this will be a better commercially for them, and therefore there's an audience, and therefore there's a pushback on the supply chain? Are you sensing that today there's a lot more awareness in the suppliers?
In Ayurveda, it's a very different setup, right? You're buying from farmers. There's no large suppliers, right? You need to develop your supply chain. So we have a very sort of collaborative and hand-holding approach where we work with them, and that's why our suppliers scale with us. That's why our suppliers keep on supplying to us at the right price. Even if tomorrow somebody else comes and say, "Hey, can I buy from you?" They'll say, "No, we grew up with Kapiva. We grew up with," and that's how Vednath did it as well. That's something I learned from Vednath, right? And so we've been able to maintain quality and sort of scalability in the supply chain through working across the line in a very close way, right? Regarding stamps, things like organic and things like that, right? Now, organic is a valuable thing, Rajiv, right? But at the end of the day, I think organic has also become somewhat of a gimmick, right? Some of our products we do organic, right? So, for example, organic jaggery, right? It makes sense, right? Because jaggery is something which could potentially be an issue, right? If it's grown anywhere, pesticides, this, that, right? Organic ghee, right? We do organic ghee, and that does make sense because grass-fed. Don't want to feed the cow. If you feed the cow well, the milk is healthy, right? Simple as that. So in a lot of things we do organic, but in a lot of sort of herbal products, organic is actually irrelevant, right? So the amla we buy, for example, is wild amla. We buy something called wild amla. It's also known as chota amla. So it's smaller, but it's much more nutritionally dense, right? And it's grown in the wild. And you go and you basically get a license to pick it. So different people can pick certain amounts of it, right? And you buy it directly from them. Slightly more expensive, but it's much healthier for you, right? But of course, that will never be organic certified because it's grown in the wild, right? But actually speaking, you can't get more organic than that because it's completely it's grown in a forest, right? So you can't really. So a lot of our items like our tulsi is wild, our honey is wild honey. So we try to actually look at very sustainably picking out wild ingredients, which are actually the healthiest you can get, right? So a lot of people try to sell everything as organic, right? But that's not the answer to everything. Certain things definitely it helps, but you have to look at each ingredient in a supply chain and understand what's the ideal kind of way to kind of procure it.
In your 4 years now, what was the period when you really felt, it was not working, or you felt, what was that period when you really had to kind of go back to your some inner strengths? Something really didn't work. In spite of all the background and the perseverance you had.
Absolutely. So we started the business actually 3 years ago, right? In the current avatar, like end of 2017, just below 3 years. And when we launched initially, we actually got a fantastic product market fit. So we launched initially in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, right? And we launched primarily offline initially. Online was a smaller part of the business, right? And we placed our product in about 600 stores, right? And we saw great movement, great sale, and we were like, wow, this is a huge opportunity, right? I've never seen a product market fit like this. Let's invest, let's grow very quickly, right? So within 4-5 months, right, we grew from 3-4 cities to 50 cities, right? And we grew from 500 stores to 10,000 stores, something like that, right? But that was a big mistake. We grew too quickly, too fast, right? What we found is that in especially smaller towns, there was no oversight. Salespeople were going and dumping stock at retailers. They were not putting the right product at the right location. There was no oversight in terms of collections, right? So, we actually reached a point in early 2018 where we were like, okay, what the hell is going on, right? So it was a very scary time in the business. We were like, we've just started and there's so much going on. The outstanding numbers don't make sense. We're in so many cities. Are these guys going to the market? How are we running the safety? And it was a tough time. It was a time where, we were like, what do we do? Literally, then what we did was, we were like, okay, we need to sort this out. We took a hard decision at that time. Luckily, our online business was trying to pick up, right? So we had that balance. So we took the hard decision at that time that, okay, we don't want to be in 40 cities. We don't want to be in 50 cities. We're going to shut down 25, 30 cities, right? Because this doesn't make sense. We grew too quickly. Offline business needs to be controlled and needs to be monitored very closely. Payments need to be monitored very closely, right? So me and Shrey ourselves flew from region to region to region, called in every salesperson, spoke to every salesperson for half an hour, 45 each, to judge minutes each, to judge what that person was it good, bad, what he was doing. Went to distributors, visited them individually, understood what the problems were, wrapped up if we thought the distributor was not viable, wrapped up the distributor, negotiated the closing, took the stocks back, and we spent 5-6 months just cleaning up this kind of mess we had made in these 25 sort of cities.
Got it.
It was a very, very taxing ordeal, and honestly, it was not great because at the end of the day, we could have spent that time growing the business instead of cleaning this up, right? At the same time, it was really a big learning experience, right? So I'll give you fast forward 2 years later to today, right? We realized that offline is not a channel where you can grow from 0 to 100 like this, right? You have to. So now we have technology in every part of the offline network. So before you choose what new store to place a product in, before you choose what products to put in that store, your secondary, your primary, your location of the retailer, your eco, your turnaround, all of this is tracked through a software that we have built in across the entire sales network. We've been slowly working on this, but a year ago, even after cleaning up the mess, we were at about a 40 days outstanding for our GT visitors, right? Since then, we've grown 3 times and outstanding is down to 21 days, right? Our credit. So we've really kind of put a lot of time, effort, money into streamlining that after that. And now for the first time after all of that mess, I'm happy to say that offline channel is finally a profitable channel for the first time last month, which was a very big deal for us.
We keep talking about online, offline, and what you highlighted on the offline is extremely good insight. How is your online build and what's the relationship you're seeing online? Is online awareness building and now actual sales, and is it driving your offline inquiries?
So online, I'll divide it into 2 pieces, right? One is our own website, and one is marketplaces. Let's say Amazon, your Big Baskets, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, I would say your Amazons and Big Baskets are a profitable channel for us, right? So it's already EBITDA positive. It doesn't require a sales force. A lot of investment which you require on offline is not required in online, right? So it's a profitable channel. It's a scalable channel because the traffic there is driven by Amazon, right? So Amazon is driving the traffic. The reason why online works so well for us is that we are a high involvement category, right? So people want to understand more about the product, what it does, what are the benefits, and online gives you the opportunity to actually read in detail and get more information before you actually purchase anything, right?
Yeah.
Online for a new business and for a category like ours has been a great fit, right? So we've seen fantastic growth. About 70% of our business today is online, right?
Wow.
And it's a significant chunk. So today we are roughly, if you look at a GMV point of view, roughly about 80-90 crore business, right? And out of that, we have about 70% of our sales coming from online, right? Within online, our marketplaces are a place where there is some demand creation. So we partner with platforms to do demand creation sometimes. But majority, a platform would be bottom of the funnel, right? Because the traffic is being driven by Amazon or a Big Basket. And then you're presenting as one of the options that the consumer has, right, to pick from. So that's when your reviews, etc., kick in, right? The website is very interesting. So that can actually lead to top of the funnel demand creation, right? So you can actively, market to people. You can reach out to, people through Facebook, Google. We use very often influencers as well, to kind of reach out to people. And you can actually educate people about the product and then bring them into the brand as a whole. So we see a lot of first-time customer acquisition happening through our own website, right? So that's how we look at it. And we, of course, now, Rajiv, it's an omni-channel world, right? So we talk to our customers. We find a customer has first time come in through our website, then has gone and bought on Amazon, and then has found, it's available downstairs and started buying it downstairs, right? So I think customers are no longer offline and online, right? They are just looking for convenience. Right?
Yes.
So end of the day, being available to the customers is the most important thing. That's the way we look at it.
No, it's a very, very nice way of putting it, because in many of our minds, we treat offline and online as distinct, but the customer doesn't care. But there are different purposes of each channel, and you can marry the two. Yeah. What next, Amif? I mean, Touchwood's been, what you've shared with me is a startup's dream. I know you've got your own pain points and scars, but what next for you? This is a great category. And the good part is that I think it's got potentially a global appeal, because Indians settle overseas plus non-Indians, which is a great fascination. I spent a lot of time in China, and I know that Chinese, traditional medicine had huge following even outside of the Chinese-speaking world. So, what next for you? How are you pacing yourself?
Sure.
And what are the constraints you see along the way?
No, so Rajiv, first of all, to your point, absolutely agree. It's been a fantastic journey, right? I think, when we look back and we see our growth, I think you can literally, on my fingers, I can count FMCG startups that have scaled the way we have, right? So I think the journey has been fantastic, and we are very blessed and proud to, and touched to have been able to make it here. I think definitely the idea now is to grow very aggressively. So right now, if you see where the company's grown, we've grown with, the sort of consumers who are very, very prone to Ayurveda, right?
Mm.
So even till 150 crores or 200 crores, we see the journey where we have somewhat low hanging fruit. Very easy to convert a consumer. There are a lot of consumers, especially, so we find a lot of youngsters who consumed Ayurveda in their youth, have a very positive thought process about Ayurveda, right? But there's no company speaking to them, right? So converting that customer has been relatively easy, right? So you would call them fence sitters, but they are more leaning towards they're almost falling on the Ayurveda side, right?
That's right.
They're fence sitters because they don't have a relevant brand. So those customers have been relatively cheap and easy to convert for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've had very, very strong retention, right? From a business point of view, our retention levels are 50% plus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that also allows us to grow very aggressively. So we acquire customers, retain them very well, and acquire new customers, right? So having said that, we see a very clear journey to 150, 200 crores, right? Going forward, the idea now, Rajiv, is that how do we get to the 500 crore mark, right? So let me leave aside the international question for now. I'll address that at the end. But on the 500 crore mark, the idea now is that there's two ways of doing this, right? How do you acquire that new bunch of customers? That's a big question, right? One is to wait and kind of slowly build it up, word of mouth. Then that's about, let's say, 7 to 8 year journey to 500 crore. Right? What we're looking to do is that we're actually looking to raise some money, right? And invest into content and brand. We're not going to be a typical sort of TV advertising, your typical kind of, but what we're going to invest that money into is we're going to invest into making the customer understand who we are, right? So use online channels, kind of talk to them and create content, to help consumer make their decisions, right? So consumers who are on the fence, as you go deeper and deeper them, they need more and more data, they need more and more insight, right? So providing that to the insight through our website, through Amazon, through branding, through YouTube, whatever it is, right? So create a strategy where we can invest that money into brand building and content, right? So that's the sort of plan we have. We see a very clear strategy to hit about 400-500 crore as a company in the next 4 to 5 years, right? So that's where we're moving to right now in the domestic market.
Yeah.
Regarding the global market, Rajiv, honestly, you're bang on. Probably the opportunity might even be larger, right? In a place like, say, like the US. But, honestly, when I started this business, there was a personal angle to it as well. I wanted to do something for Indians by Indians,
Yeah.
When I thought about it, a lot of the products we produced, a lot of was from the point of view that, okay, we need good nutrition in India, right? So, initially there was no question that I wanted to have an India focused business, right? Now it's been about almost 3 years. We've been growing pretty well. And the idea is that what next? Is international markets on our agenda? Yes. Are we going to do it immediately? Probably not, because, I studied in the US, right? My sister lives there. We even had a couple of people approach us from the US to partner with them, right? And I went and I spent a couple of weeks there to understand the market, right? And what I understood, Rajiv, was that it's a totally different business. The mistakes that a lot of Indian firms make is that they take the product from India and try to sell the exact same product to the US. But at the end of the day, the customer is different. The customer's wants and needs are different. The distribution channels are different. The market is different, right? So to build a business in the US, you have to reimagine the business, right? You have to create a US-centric business, and almost like creating a new business, right? Trying to transplant an India business in the US makes no sense, right? Then you have no right to win. Then there's someone who's sitting there who'll do the same thing, who'll understand that market, understand the consumer better than you, and they'll win. And we've always been like in the heart of the business has always been consumer centricity, right? I myself personally talk to so many consumers. So without having that conviction of myself knowing the consumer and what they want, we didn't feel comfortable, launching in the US yet. However, as time goes by, as the India business gets more stable, as we raise a large round, we definitely, the idea is there that how can we explore this opportunity? It's not fully crystallized yet, but it's something which we have in the back of our mind.
And I'm maybe just stepping away from Kapiva. You are, in that generation which has seen India and has seen potential. And we're all, the last 4 or 5 years has been about startups and young companies. And when you look at this, what are the things you feel good about, and what are the things you feel there still needs to be a lot more things to do, a lot more things to work on. And the reason I'm asking is because I think I have had obviously many years more of banking experience, and I've seen that traditional India, or the old style corporate India, uh, some of them did not transform either from a governance. You guys, you guys did something which was very early. I mean, I've seen a lot of firms in the south. The groups in the south do this separation between the family and the professional management. And I think those are things which are really important because things are changing so fast. So if you have to kind of give us some gyan on what are the business models for youngsters as well as traditional companies which can tackle India's opportunities and challenges. Okay? I mean, what would your learnings be having spent your formative years in a traditional business household and your last 5 years doing your own stuff?
I think a lot of customer centricity, has been lost in FMCG because people have had it too good, right? And I'm saying this coming from a business background, right? There was no potential competition, so no one worried so much about innovation. No one worried so much about customer, right? And even companies like large multi-billion-dollar companies, right? Who should have from the outside look like they're very, very customer centric. They're not, right? But they are waking up to it for the first time to some extent today. But for them to become so agile so quickly, it's going to be a big challenge, right? So the exact number is slipping my mind, but I think roughly about 40 to 45% of India uses toothpaste on a daily basis, right? Now, the next 20% of the people who end up buying toothpaste, or the next 30% of the people end up buying toothpaste, will it be the exact same model that is being working now? Probably not. You need to understand that consumer. You need to figure out that how to make the product relevant for them. Maybe it's a different formulation with a cheaper product. Maybe the way you use, the basic US. So I'll give you like a consulting firm. Once Colgate went to a consulting firm, right? And Colgate asked him, how do I increase my sales? And the consulting firm turned around and said, okay, make the mouth bigger. So every time somebody takes the toothpaste, they'll consume more, right? So suddenly the sales went up by 10% because people are consuming 10% more. That kind of model, capitalistic model, will not be the best model for the next 20%, right? You need to figure out, if you want to onboard that consumer, you have to kind of bring that value consciousness into the heart of the business. You need to innovate. You need to figure out a different way of doing it, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity to innovate and for new brands to be created, right? So that's something which I find very exciting. And I think this is true for almost all businesses, right, in India.
Nowadays, I try not to bring Corona in the conversation because we need to move forward while we take care of our health. The inflection on online consumption, online awareness, has it impacted your business and your mode of operations positively?
No, absolutely. So I think one thing we had to do very quickly was sort out our supply chain, right? I think the day after lockdown, I was spending 14 hours a day just worrying about manufacturing, logistics, and warehousing. There was nothing else I was worried about. And bringing in flexibility, I think it's a big learning for us, right? That in good times you feel nothing can go wrong, right? So you don't build so much flexibility into your system. You don't build any backups. You feel everything just keep working perfectly. But I think the big learning has been to bring in flexibility into whatever you do. And agility, we've always thought important from a branding, marketing, distribution point of view, but never from a supply chain point of view before, right? So the big sort of improvement I would say in the company has been on the supply chain side. And it's actually made us a lot more efficient, right? Our costs have actually come down, right? Because we realized we were wasting money, where we didn't need to, right? So it made us focus on what's the most important, right? In terms of the inflection point, right? So online is something which is grown a decent amount, right? But we also seen good tailwinds in the category. So combination of both online and the category. So we've seen good growth in the last couple of months. But having said that, Rajiv, we've been growing we're growing at the same pace this year as we were growing last year, right? So I'm sure some of it is part, as you get larger and larger, it does get more and more difficult to grow, right? That's true. But definitely there is some tailwind, right, which has come from online and things like that. But we've always been an online digital first business, right? So we decided to take that path a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, right? And we've always kind of looked at digital as our DNA, right? And we are omni-channel for sure, and we'll continue to be available. So we're available in about 8,000 locations offline today, right? And that number will keep growing. But up to the 300-400 crore mark, we will still be primarily online, right?
And like I said, it's a delight to hear people like you see. And again, I'm very happy that Naval encouraged me to talk to you. You know, so
It's an absolute pleasure.
so you know, we'll keep in touch. And look, you know, we wish you well, your family, and we as well. And great, Amev. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks a
so
lot.
much. An
And
absolute
Anand,
pleasure. Thank you so much.